All right. So, for many people, an interaction with a bee is negative. It's something that you avoid. An unwanted visitor at an inopportune time. But for a beekeeper, we can't wait to open up a hive and spend some time with tens of thousands of the most fascinating creatures on Earth. So today, I want to bring you inside a beehive. How glad are you that I don't have an actual beehive?
Yes. If not, I can do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. I've got Velcro on my bottom of my bee suit that's catching on the carpet. Anyway, because normally I would wear boots. I wouldn't normally wear flats. All right. Before we go inside the hive, let's talk about the tools that we need for our journey. The most important things you'll need are your bee suit, your smoker, and your hive tool. You'll hear in a minute how everything is sticky that you're given a beehive. So this is your hive tool. There's a pocket right there. Next slide. Smoke serves the purpose of masking the alarm pheromone that bees use to communicate with each other. It's kind of like a cloaking device. So you open this up, you make fire, let it burn down, and then the smoke comes out here, it's the bellows, and you use it to calm the bees down. It's one of those things that as you're using it, you're like, man, I don't really think this works. Like, they're still kind of worked up. But then when you go out to the bee yard one day and you forget your smoker, not that it's ever happened to us, then you're like, whoa, that smoker makes a huge difference.
Is there a particular type of wood or like what kind of, does it matter the type of wood you use?
Not a lot. People use pretty much whatever they find. Like what I use primarily are pine shavings that I use for my chicken coop. So that's what, that's what I burn in there. I start it with pine straw, which I just happen to have from gardening. Then I use the pine shavings. Yeah, so.
I didn't know if it made a difference in the type of wood you use. Maybe.
Yeah, some people use cardboard. Some people use burlap.
Oh.
Yeah. Some people use like dried leaves off the ground.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. All right, the next slide. The hive tool is mostly used to pry things apart that are stuck together with wax and propolis. Propolis is a resin substance that bees collect from trees that they use inside the hive. We'll talk more about propolis later. You may have seen videos of a pretty blonde lady in Austin messing with bees with her hair all done and wearing cute outfits and no bee suit, no gloves. Don't be influenced by these videos. I recommend that you suit up. You can see that a bee suit is designed so as not to allow the bees to get in anywhere. If I had the thing, whenever there's a zipper, there's also Velcro over, like bees they can get in anywhere. One very popular place we get stung is here on our wrist because the gloves that we wear sometimes it get separated and then you get stung on your wrist. So bees are very inventive. They can get in anywhere. Next slide. I also carry an EpiPen with me when I'm in the bees. I do happen to be allergic to bee venom. Only 2% of people are truly allergic to bees. If you swell up where you get stung, that doesn't mean that you're allergic. That's just a normal reaction to a bee sting. Signs of an allergic reaction are when you have effects that aren't where you got stung. Like say if you get stung on the arm and your lips swell up. That's an allergic reaction. A true allergic reaction is a medical emergency. If you have one, you need to seek medical attention right away. So now that we're safe and we have all of our equipment, let's dive inside. Inside a hive, you'll find 3 different honeybees. Next slide. The star of the show is the queen bee. Yes, ma'am.
On your EpiPens, does it go through your bee suit?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't had to do it, but I'm told it does.
Okay.
Thank goodness I haven't had to do it. The star of the show is the queen bee. There is almost always one queen bee in each hive. She is the mother of all the other bees in the hive. And you can see that, like that's a worker bee. So it's very different. It almost doesn't even look like the same insect. She has a longer body. She has that bigger, like shiny thorax. They're
beautiful.
Yeah. A queen bee can produce 3,000 eggs a day, more than her own body weight, during peak baby having time. Wow. A queen only leaves the hive one time during her entire life for her mating flight. She mates with an average of 12 drones, so that's quite the day for her, during that mating flight. And incidentally, the drones do die afterwards. So the drones, which is what a boy bee is called, they mate with her, and then they die. They just fall out of the sky and die. So this one flight fertilizes all the eggs she'll need for the rest of her life. So the sperm from all the drones goes into a part in her body called a spermatheca, like a little storage pouch. And those 3,000 eggs a day that she's laying for the rest of her life, about 3 years or so, gets fertilized or not by one of these, the sperms out of the spermatheca.
I'm sorry, how long does she live?
About 3 years.
Okay.
There's also genetic variation then too.
Yeah.
Right, so.
All right, next one. All right, I think this is supposed to be a photo of a drone. It's not a terribly convincing photo of a drone, but a boy bee, they're very distinctive from the worker bees. They're kind of fatter and longer. Yeah, okay.
Chunky, yeah.
For most of the year, you'll also find drone bees in the hive. Drones are the only males in the hive, and they have one function, which we discussed before. They fertilize queen bees that are out for their one mating flight. So their whole life that's the only reason they exist. There's these things called drone congregation areas that are just places where drones fly, and when a queen goes out for her one mating flight, she'll fly to a drone congregation area, fly around there, and the queen flies fast, and so it's only the fastest flying drones that catch her. If you look out in front of a beehive, you might notice some dead bees there. Those are, as the season winds down and the amount of forage, the amount of food they can find goes down, the worker bees, which are all ladies, kill the drone bees and drag their bodies out of the hive. Because over the winter, when they're just trying to survive, the drones are only a drain on hive resources, and the hive doesn't want to support them through the winter. And so, as winter draws near, I always explain this to my husband every year, just as a cautionary tale. All right, next slide. They are deadbeat leeches. That's what they are. All right, so now for the stars of the show, the workers. Most of the bees in the hive are workers. All of the bees you encounter out in the world are workers, usually foragers. Worker bees fulfill different roles in the hive depending on their age. Next. When the bees are 1 to 2 days old, like right when they emerge from the cell, right when they're born, they clean the cells around them. From 3 days to 11 days, they take care of their fellow larvae, the baby bees around them. From 12 days to 17 days, they build cells and store nectar and pollen. So they take the nectar and pollen for bees, the forager bees that come in from out in the world, and they store it away in cells. And then from 18 to 21 days, they guard the hive. Now, these are the bees that you get in trouble with sometimes, the guard bees. They're the ones that are a little spiteful sometimes.
You're like Amazonian.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And from 22 to 42 days, which is usually about as long as they live, they forage. So they're the ones that you see out on your flowers, out in the front yard, and in the school gardens that we were hearing about earlier. All right, next one. But before a bee is a worker, a drone, or a queen, they start out as an egg. Next. They each have different timelines, but they all go through the same phases. So the queen, she goes around and she just puts her bottom down into each cell and she makes an egg, and that's what those eggs are. So first the egg is laid, and then the next slide, the egg kind of falls down and then it hatches into this worm-looking thing. You see the worm-looking thing? And that cloudy stuff that's in the bottom of those cells, that is royal jelly. And so that's it. They feed the larva royal jelly for a certain amount of time, and then they feed them just honey. Now, when the colony is raising up another queen, they feed her royal jelly longer. That's what turns her into a queen. And they also make a different cell for her so she can grow bigger. And that's the whole thing. But anyway, the worm-looking thing is called the larva. All right, next. At about a week, the worker bees seal the larva into a cell with tan cappings. Do you see those tan things on the cells? Once the larva is capped, it's officially a pupa. When she's ready to be born, she chews her way through that wax capping, and she's born into the world and immediately goes to work, cleaning up, taking care of other larvae, and engaging in the work of the hive. And what is the main mission of the hive? It is survival. The mission of the hive is survival. And how do they survive? By gathering and storing resources. Those resources are, next, honey is the product of the hive that everyone is the most familiar with. It's certainly the most sweetest and the most beautiful. Forager bees, as they're going around on flowers, They fill their stomachs with nectar from flowers before bringing it back to the hive to convert it into honey. An enzyme in the bee's stomachs breaks down the nectar and helps it produce honey. A bee may need to visit 1,000 flowers before their stomach is full and it's time to return to the hive. The forager bee regurgitates the nectar to be eaten by another bee, who then, so it has to go through several bee stomachs and the enzymes inside the bee, but it's so great. This process goes over and over again until the moisture is reduced from about 70%, so nectar is about 70% moisture, down to this is less than 18% moisture, actual honey. When the nectar is ready for storage, when they have enough of the moisture out of it, they put it into a cell and they cap it with wax for use later. That's what you see on, that's that white stuff, it's wax that's capped over the honey. And then in their mind, they're going to use it later. But in this particular case, we're going to take it from them and put it in jars. Some interesting points about bees and honey. A single bee produces about a tablespoon of honey in her lifetime. It takes about 2 million flower visits to make a pound of honey. The honeybee is the only insect that makes food for humans. Honey is the only food that never spoils. A pot of honey was found in King Tut's tomb in good condition. Honey is an antimicrobial agent and can be used effectively on minor burns or scrapes. It has been shown to heal wounds, speed the healing of wounds. Honey is antibacterial, antifungal, and antioxidant. There's nothing wrong with crystallized honey. It all happens to honey eventually. It happens to all natural honey eventually. You can see this. These are some crystals that are just
So what
happening.
do you do when the honey crystallizes?
So you can either just use it like it is. There's nothing wrong with it. Some people really like crystallized honey. Or if you warm it up, it'll decrystallize. But you don't want to warm it up over, say, 100 degrees because then that destroys the enzymes and the things that make honey, raw honey, so great. And that's part of,
Warm it like a gentle.
yeah, like you can take a heating pad and wrap the heating pad around it. That's one thing. Or I've also taken, you know those turkey roasters that you can buy and set on your counter? You can take one of those and set it to 100. If you have lots of jars, like, oh, I don't know, I do, then you can decrystallize your honey in there as well. Another thing I did this year for the first time is I took the crystallized honey and made it into creamed honey. So I made regular creamed honey, cinnamon creamed honey, which was very popular, and also vanilla bean creamed honey. All right, the next slide. So this is pollen. This pollen is the protein source for bees. So I hear some sniffles and some coughs, and so we're all sniffling and coughing from mountain cedar, which doesn't necessarily help the bees an awful lot. The pollen that's like flying through the air, the bees collect it actually from the plants, and this is how they store it. And you can see all the different colors, which is just fascinating and just so beautiful. The next slide.
Catherine, would it be a good idea to get like hill country honey or something like? I mean, I guess it'd be tough because they're really looking for flowers. They're not going to be hanging around evergreens and all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah, and there's some plants that bees are super excited about, and then there's some that are like, well, if there's nothing else, I'll take this. And I mean, like right now, out at my farm, there's bees all over the chicken feed. And it isn't that they're getting anything from the chicken feed, but there's just, you know, it's winter and there's not much out there, but it's warm enough for them to fly. And so they think, oh, wait, maybe this has something on it that I can use. And so they're just all over it.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I was also going to add that the Helleborus, the Lenten roses that do really well in semi-shade during the winter and very early spring, they're evergreen. I have bees all
over it, I
over
bet, yeah.
those in our yard in the wintertime if it's above 50 degrees.
Right.
But it's like that's an easy thing for people to plant, and it spreads by seed, and it gives them, you know,
Some
something
forage
to
in the winter.
forage.
Yeah.
And then also, I think it might be helpful. If do you mind explaining? Because when people go to the grocery store, not all honey is the same, right?
Yeah.
So if you really want the benefits that you're talking about, what should people be looking for to make sure that they're getting those?
Well, what you should be looking for is a beekeeper.
Yes.
Most of the honey that you buy in the store, there's a series on Netflix called, what's it called?
I know what you're talking about, and that went with like that talk I did about food safety and stuff, about how many
Yeah.
people faked honey.
Right.
But like, I only get stuff at farmers markets from beekeepers, just for that reason.
Right, you need to
Yeah.
know your beekeeper.
Yeah.
Because the United States produces this much honey, but we use this much honey. So there's a lot of honey coming in from other countries, and there's this constant game of cat and mouse as far as like testing for things that aren't honey, and then figure out how to get around the tests. And it's just, you know, a continual game. So really, the only way to really know what you're getting is to actually know your beekeeper. And there are lots of us around. Where were we? All right, so this guy up here, or girl, we call these pollen pants. So the bees that are going around getting pollen, they pack it into these saddlebags on their legs, and they bring it back. And it's so fun to watch them come in, because sometimes you'll see it'll be white, or it'll be yellow, or it'll be blue, or it just depends on what's around. And then they come in, and then some of the younger bees that are still in there working in the hive, they help them get them off and pack it into cells. All right, next one. This is propolis, this gluey stuff. This is some propolis from one of my cells. The last product of the hive that we'll talk about today is propolis. Propolis is a natural resin product made of resin that bees collect from trees. The bees use it to seal things up, to make an entrance to the hive smaller. It's an amazing substance in nature. Like if they're building inside of a tree, they'll use propolis to smooth out the inside of the cavity that they're building their nest in. If a mouse, for instance, gets into a hive, the bees attack it and kill it, obviously, because they don't want the bee eating all their honeycomb and whatnot. And bees don't have the ability to pull the mouse out. You know, those physics just don't work. And so they'll encase it in propolis and completely entomb it in propolis so that it doesn't introduce bacteria and foul up the hive. So they use propolis for a bunch of different things. Some people call it bee glue, and that certainly describes it. As you can see, like this has ickiness all over it, which is bee glue. Probably should have washed it, but anyway. Propolis has been used for hundreds, if not thousands of years to treat many different maladies. It's antibacterial, antifungal, antiviral. Egyptians even used it to embalm cadavers. Greek and Roman physicians used it as a mouth disinfectant and as an antiseptic and a healing product in wound treatment. In World War II, it was employed in several Soviet clinics for tuberculosis treatment. It is even today commercially available in the form of capsules, mouthwash solutions, creams, throat lozenges, powder, and also many purified products from which the wax is removed. Due to its antimicrobial, antiviral, and antioxidant properties, it's widely used in human and veterinary medicine, pharmacology, and cosmetics. It's pretty cool stuff. All right, next slide. Oops. All right, so now you're a trained beekeeper. I hope that you'll welcome interactions with our flying friends. And seriously, if you would like to come out and come see a real beehive, we have a farm out in Nevada, just about 15 or 20 minutes east of here. And we love having people come out and see the hive. So.
You said you're in Nevada?